School year 2021 to 2022 is set to start either by next month or in August. But even before classes start, some private schools are in danger of shutting down. This as a BIR revenue regulation effectively hikes tax rates of private schools to 25% from the current 10%. The tax hike comes at a time when the country is heavily battered by the COVID-19 pandemic, which has already caused the closure of some 900 private schools. The crisis also forced some 400,000 students to transfer to public schools. An expert says this trend could continue with a tax rate hike on private schools.
The schools have not decided yet whether they can survive, whether they can sustain. And we are also concerned about parents, about students now asking us on what would be the decision on whether to continue in the ensuing semester and school year.
Meanwhile, senators fear that increasing taxes will result in a tuition fee hike in private schools.
It is natural to assume that the schools will pass on this tax to the students. It's reasonable. I mean, and you cannot blame them for that. They are already suffering.
As such, senators have asked the BIR to repeal the revenue regulation. At a Senate hearing Wednesday, lawmakers pointed out the wrong interpretation of the BIR on the corporate recovery and tax incentives for enterprises, or CREATE law, which served as the basis for the regulation. They said that under CREATE law, tax of private schools should have been lowered to 1% to help them better cope with the pandemic. But under the BIR's interpretation, educational institutions should first be non-profit to avail of the 1% tax rate. Otherwise, they would pay a 25% tax. Senators and private school associations note the BIR misinterpreted the National Internal Revenue Code, or NIRC, quoted in the CREATE law to include educational institution as non-profit.
The CREATE bill did not touch upon the characterization, the character of the educational institution. It did not. We did not touch on it. It's the same. What we did was to touch on the rates given the pandemic. But the BIR regulation, Madam Chairperson, ruled and interpreted it otherwise and redefined what is an educational institution.
For us, it has always been clear the non-profit qualification pertains only to hospitals, not to proprietary education institutions.
The Senate is set to amend the NIRC to correct the provision which resulted in the misinterpretation. The Finance Department, where BIR is an attached agency to, supports the amendment, but says they can't repeal the law just yet while the legislation is pending. The DOF asks there is enough time to wait for the legislation.
The filing of the ITR for the schools will still be in April 2022, so there is still, I think, enough time for passing this measure and have it in effect.
Senators are asking the DOF and the BIR to at least suspend the regulation, considering the near opening of the next school year. The DOF has requested for a week to come up with a decision on the matter. Shaila Francisco, we are One News.